My name is Patrick Fletcher. I met my wife, Natalie, 2 years after enduring the turmoil of a bitter divorce. It was shortly after I had completed a 4-year term in the Marine Corps. My ex-wife had a way of captivating people. Her radiant smile could charm anyone, and her piercing gray eyes seemed to see right through you. I had trusted and loved her unconditionally, a decision I still struggle to forgive myself for. She was manipulative and selfish, and I was blind to it until it was too late. When I returned from Afghanistan, I was confronted with a devastating reality. While I was overseas, she had been entertaining multiple lovers, spending my hard-earned money on extravagant parties, outlandish outfits, and propping up her lazy companions. That betrayal changed me profoundly. On one hand, it stripped away my naivety, making me less susceptible to deception. On the other hand, it left a scar, deep and ugly, that hardened my soul. I became a suspicious, overly cautious man, even with Natalie, whom I loved deeply. Though I wanted to trust her fully, I found it nearly impossible. She occasionally told small, convenient lies, which chipped away at my ability to let my guard down. Both of us had been through failed marriages before, and I hoped that this time we'd grow old together. But my past haunted me. I had been deceived before, and it almost destroyed me. I feared letting my guard down again, but I knew that if I couldn't, I'd never find peace. Perhaps one day I could truly sleep with both eyes closed. But for now, my wounds kept one of them wide open. The more I loved Natalie, the more paranoia consumed me. I knew the deeper the love, the greater the potential for heartbreak. She wanted us to start a family, but I kept hesitating, haunted by the thought of being trapped in another disastrous relationship with 18 years of child support looming over me. Still, I was beginning to feel ready to bury my past and take that step forward. I hated that the ghosts of yesterday continued to poison our marriage. I wanted to believe that Natalie deserved my trust. Natalie didn't know I'd noticed her flirtatious tendencies. She never crossed any lines, but her behavior unsettled me. I decided to observe and wait, hoping my insecurities were baseless. I tried to mask my fears, showering her with affection and attention. I took her to plays, movies, and dances. I made love to her with tenderness and passion. My military experiences had toughened me, but I loved her enough to shield her from my darker, more ruthless side. Despite my efforts, I had prepared for the worst. From the very beginning of our 4-year marriage, I opened a secret investment account in the Cayman Islands. Every bonus I earned was paid directly into that account through a foreign subsidiary of my company, bypassing U.S. records entirely. I excelled at my job, and the account steadily grew. My plan was simple. If things went well, we could use the funds for a summer home or a luxurious trip around the world. But if the marriage fell apart, she couldn't take what she didn't know existed, and I'd have the financial freedom to rebuild my life. I don't think Natalie ever realized how deeply scarred I was. Early in our relationship, we had a conversation that revealed much about our differing perspectives on betrayal. One evening, I collapsed into my favorite chair after a rough day. "Natalie, it's been a hard one," I said with a heavy sigh. "What happened, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "I had lunch with a friend today. He just found out his wife has been unfaithful to him. He asked me for advice." I stared out the window, lost in thought. "And what did you tell him?" she pressed, leaning closer. I turned to her, meeting her gaze. "I told him that if it were me, the marriage would be over. Once there's intimate contact with another man, the trust is broken. Some men might forgive, but I wouldn't. Respect and loyalty are sacred to me." Her expression shifted as she listened, something subtle but unsettling. Maybe she had a reason. Everyone makes mistakes. If he loves her enough, he could forgive her, she said, her tone curious but detached. "Love isn't the issue here," I replied firmly. "Her actions don't show love. He's devastated. Even if he forgave her, he'd never forget." I told him to plan his exit. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and her response lingered in my mind long after the conversation ended. That moment reinforced my resolve. Loyalty was everything to me. I didn't tell her about the retribution I was capable of, or the depths of my scars. Some things were better left unsaid. "You don't need to remind me never to cheat on you, Patrick. I can see how much this topic upsets you," Natalie said softly. "I'm glad you shared your feelings with me. Never forget, my heart belongs to you and only you. There could never be another man for me. I love you, my handsome man," she added, settling into my lap with a seductive smile before planting a kiss on my lips. That conversation happened 4 years ago. I wish I could say her words brought me complete peace, but they didn't. Still, I was glad to have made my stance on infidelity crystal clear. My first wife's betrayal had blindsided me, leaving me reeling. One day I thought I had a solid marriage, and the next, my bank accounts were empty. I was locked out of my own home, and I found myself nursing a drink at a bar, trying to make sense of it all. Since then, I've lived by a simple code: trust but verify. Last weekend, Natalie and I attended a neighbor's birthday party. It was there that I noticed something that made my stomach churn. Across the room, she kept exchanging lingering, affectionate glances with a man who couldn't have been more than 25 years old. I'm 31, and Natalie is 28, but the way she looked at him reminded me of how she used to look at me, full of adoration. It had been a long time since I'd seen that look directed my way. In that moment, the pieces fell into place. My heart sank as I realized they had either been lovers in the past or were currently involved. It wasn't just my observation. My friends and family noticed how much attention she was giving him too. Anger and humiliation coursed through me. The happy marriage I thought I had suddenly felt like an illusion. The love I believed was mine alone apparently wasn't. When we got home, I was unusually quiet, dreading the inevitable conversation. If she was unfaithful, our marriage was over. Even if she wasn't physically involved, I wasn't sure I could live with a woman who carried romantic feelings for someone else. As I brooded, Natalie broke the silence. "Honey, what's on your mind? You haven't said a word since we left the party. Did I do something to upset you?" Her voice was tinged with concern, but there was an edge of defensiveness too. "Come on, Patrick. I know you better than this. What's bothering you?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Who was the guy you spent half the night talking to?" Her body stiffened slightly, and I didn't miss the momentary tension. "Is that what's bothering you?" she asked, feigning nonchalance. "He's just someone I used to work with before I met you. We were just catching up. Most of the conversation was about you and how lucky I am to be loved by a man like you. I only have eyes for you, you big jerk," she added with a forced laugh. "I think he was jealous of you." She seemed satisfied with her explanation, clearly expecting me to apologize and let it go. But I didn't. "You're lying," I said bluntly. "What? Why would you say that?" she shot back, her expression shifting to worry. "I've known you for years, Natalie. I saw the way you looked at him. It's a look you can't fake, and it hurt to see you give it to someone else. You're a good liar, but not good enough. This is your chance to come clean before things get worse." Her defenses crumbled. She sighed deeply, looking defeated. "Patrick, we were lovers a long time ago. He left me when he fell for a younger woman. I never thought about him again until I saw him at the party. I'm sorry I lied to you. I know how you are. But my love for you is stronger than any old feelings I might have had for him. You have to believe me." I felt a hollow ache in my chest. "Maybe your love for me is stronger, but you've loved him longer. I can't share you emotionally or physically with another man. He looked at you like a predator stalking his prey, and your body language told him he had a chance. I love you, Natalie, but I don't know if this marriage can survive." Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded with me. "Please, Patrick, I haven't done anything wrong. You're my whole world. We're meant to be together. I'll never see or speak to him again, I promise." Her tears were genuine, but my instincts wouldn't let me console her. "We'll see, Natalie. We'll see." For the next 2 months, we pretended the incident never happened. Our intimacy became strained, and something in me had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that the trust between us was broken. Natalie tried her hardest to convince me she was fully committed, but her efforts often felt overcompensating. She became distant, guarded, and reluctant to share her thoughts. A subtle hint of disrespect crept into her tone when she spoke to me. It was clear I was losing her, but I didn't know how or why. My instincts told me her behavior had something to do with the man from the party. Her once bright smile seemed forced, and she struggled to meet my eyes. Bracing myself, I decided it was time to confront her. "Natalie, enough is enough," I said firmly. "What's going on? You haven't been yourself for months now. You're going through the motions of being my wife, but something's clearly wrong. What happened at that party, and why can't you move past it?" Our marriage had been steadily deteriorating. We were still having intimacy, but it didn't feel like the deep connection we once shared. It was mechanical, devoid of the love we used to have. One evening, as I confronted her with my growing unease, she tried to brush it off. "Everything's fine, honey. I've just been feeling a little off. Probably hormones," she said with a weak, consoling smile. But I wasn't convinced. Something felt wrong. Deciding to dig deeper, I stopped by her workplace one afternoon, using the pretense of taking her to lunch. I was friendly with a couple of her colleagues and thought they might offer some insight. When I arrived, I learned that she had already gone to lunch, leaving around 11. Being a supervisor, she had the flexibility to come and go as she pleased. "She left about an hour ago," said Tim, a coworker I was on good terms with. "Does she leave early often?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "2 or 3 times a week, I think," he replied. "Does she go alone?" I pressed, my voice tightening despite my efforts to remain composed. Tim hesitated, glancing around before leaning in. "One time, I saw a young blonde guy pick her up. I happened to be looking out the window. Guess my curiosity got the better of me," he said quietly. "She usually gets back around 1 if you want to wait." His sympathetic expression said it all. "I'm sorry, man." "Thanks, Tim," I said, forcing a smile. "Please don't mention I was here." As I left, my worst fears materialized. I had a good idea who the blonde man was, and it wasn't hard to imagine what they were doing during those extended lunch breaks. I resolved to confront her when the time was right. 2 days later, Natalie came home 2 hours late. She had been drinking and was unusually aggressive, immediately trying to initiate intimacy. Her behavior was unlike anything I had seen before. She was wild, almost desperate. That night, as I lay beside her, sleep eluded me. Something about the entire situation felt off. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. Natalie's recent behavior was setting off every alarm bell in my head. It finally clicked, and disgust and rage consumed me. It was time to end the charade. That evening, as we sat at the dinner table, I broke the silence. "Whose idea was it for you to give me sloppy seconds last night?" I asked coldly. Her face froze, guilt written all over it. "Sloppy seconds? What are you talking about, Patrick?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Last night, during intimacy, something felt wrong. You've never acted like that before. Then it hit me. You came straight from another man's bed. Your betrayal turned you on, didn't it? How long has this been going on?" "Don't lie," I added, my voice rising slightly. "I know more than you think I do." Her eyes filled with tears as she tried to avoid my gaze. "Not long, Patrick. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." "Why?" I demanded, my voice cracking with anger. "Why would you cheat on me? I've loved you from the moment we met. I saw a future in your eyes, and I would have taken a bullet for you. You've destroyed my heart and shattered the respect I had for you. Was it worth it?" Her silence spoke volumes. I continued, my tone icy. "The idea of giving me his leftovers, that was his, wasn't it?" She looked down, unable to deny it. "I stopped by your job the other day," I said, leaning forward. "You weren't there. I know you've been sneaking off with that blonde prick from the party. How long has this been going on?" Her voice was barely a whisper as she confessed. "He started taking me to lunch. He noticed I was attracted to him and kept complimenting me, telling me how beautiful and attractive I am. After a while, I started craving his attention. He convinced me I could keep my marriage and have him as a lover too. Once we went to a motel, I was hooked. I couldn't stop. Being with him was exciting. It made me feel like he was everything you're not. I'm sorry, Patrick. I tried to stop, but he's like a drug." Her words stung more than any physical blow. "That's it," I said firmly. "I'm seeing a lawyer tomorrow. You can have him, the house, and half of everything in our accounts. It will take me a while to forgive myself for loving and trusting someone as unfaithful as you. Luckily, there are no children caught in this mess. You've got a good job, so there'll be no alimony. You keep your pension, I'll keep mine. We're done. And don't think for a second you can come back to me when he inevitably moves on. We're finished." Tears streamed down her face as she begged. "Patrick, please forgive me. Let me try to make it up to you. I love you. I didn't mean what I said. I wasn't thinking clearly. You're my rock. I can't live without you." I shook my head, my voice calm but resolute. "You don't love me, Natalie. You love my paycheck and my boring dependability. If you hadn't been so reckless, you'd still be getting away with it. Taking you back would mean losing every shred of respect I have for myself. I'm done. Without trust, there's nothing left." From that moment on, I decided Natalie was on her own. Maybe she did love me in her own way, or maybe she was just fooling herself. But none of it mattered anymore. I didn't have to believe a single word from her lying mouth. "We're done," I told her firmly. "I hope you and Loverboy are very happy together. I warned you at the start of our relationship how I feel about betrayal. Maybe someday I'll find a woman who values a man like me." I fought back the tears that my pride wouldn't let me shed in front of her. The next day, I packed my things and moved out. Within hours, I filed for divorce. Natalie tried over and over to get me to change my mind, but I wouldn't listen. The divorce was finalized in 3 months, and to add insult to injury, she moved her unemployed boyfriend into my house. There were moments when the weight of my anger and despair felt unbearable. On my darkest days, I entertained the idea of grabbing my 9mm pistol and ending the man's life, or even hers. But common sense always prevailed. I swallowed my pain and focused on surviving. When I received the final notice of divorce, all the emotions I had been suppressing hit me like a tidal wave. Sitting alone in my apartment, watching a football game, the tears finally came. The anger that had sustained me was replaced by a hollow sadness, a grief for the companion I had once cherished and would have given my life for. For months, I isolated myself, avoiding friends and sinking into work. The thought of my ex and her worthless lover sleeping in my bed, under my roof, gnawed at me like a disease. Eventually, I realized I couldn't keep wallowing in self-pity. I forced myself to get out, to meet people again. One night, I found myself sitting at a bar, quietly observing the crowd. That's when I spotted him, Natalie's lover, shamelessly flirting with every attractive woman in the room. He noticed me watching, smirked, and pulled a blonde closer as if to rub salt in my wounds. Rage bubbled to the surface, and I began to rise, but the bartender, a friend of mine, gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "Think about it, son," he said quietly. "That guy isn't worth going to jail for, and your ex doesn't have any honor to defend. He didn't betray you. She did. Let it go." His words hit home. I took a deep breath, sat back down, and let the moment pass. Soon after, I booked a singles cruise. I had the money and the vacation time, and my best friend encouraged me to go. He promised that there'd be plenty of women on board and insisted it was time for me to move on. I needed the change and the companionship. The cruise turned out to be a good idea. For a week, I slept with a different woman every night. It helped distract me and gave my bruised ego a boost, but the emptiness in my heart remained. Most of their names slipped from my memory. I felt like a hollow shell of a man, more like a toy than a person. Just as I was about to give up and accept my loneliness, I met Heather Hardy. It was early morning, and I was headed to breakfast when I spotted her sitting alone. Her smile caught my attention immediately. It felt warm and familiar, like an old friend. Without hesitation, I filled my plate at the buffet and made my way to her table, determined not to let someone else swoop in. "Hi, I'm Patrick," I said as I sat down. "I hope you don't mind me joining you. Your smile lights up this room." "I'm Heather Hardy," she replied, extending her hand. "Have we met before? You seem so familiar." "I'm sure we haven't," I said with a grin. "I definitely remember meeting someone as stunning as you." "Are you enjoying the cruise so far?" she asked, still smiling. "I am now," I said. "What about you?" "To be honest, Patrick, it's been exhausting. Every man on this ship seems to think he's God's gift to women. I hope you're not one of them." "I can't blame them for wanting to talk to you," I replied. "You're the most captivating woman here, but I'm not a creep. Sure, I find you incredibly attractive, but I'd also like to know what's on your mind. What makes you you? It'd be amazing if we could be friends, maybe even more." "Wow," she said, raising an eyebrow. "If that's a line, it's a pretty good one. Are you for real?" "Absolutely," I said. "I've been divorced for over a year now, and I've met a lot of people on this trip, but no one has made me feel the way you do. The moment I saw you, I knew you were special. I hope I'm not coming on too strong, but that's the truth." "What makes you say I'm special?" she asked, intrigued. "It's hard to explain," I admitted, "but I felt it the second I saw you. If you don't mind me asking, what happened to your marriage?" "I take loyalty and honesty very seriously," I said, my voice growing more serious. "Unfortunately, my ex didn't. She cheated on me with an old boyfriend and tried to juggle both of us." "She should have known that would never work with me," I said, shaking my head. "How about you? What brought you on this cruise?" "I'm divorced too," Heather Hardy replied, her expression softening. "I was married for 5 years to a man very much like your ex-wife. The only good thing to come out of it is my daughter, Tara. She's 2 years old and cute as a button. My mom's taking care of her while I'm here. I needed to get away, clear my head, and figure out a plan for our future. When I get back, I'm thinking of relocating to another state to start fresh. Maybe I can help," I offered. "What kind of work do you do?" "I'm a CPA," she said. "I like the company I work for, but I need a clean slate, something new for both me and Tara." I handed her my business card. "I have some influence at the company I work for in Florida. Would you consider coming down for an interview? I'm confident we could find a place for someone as talented and intelligent as you." Her smile was warm and genuine. "I'll think about it. Thank you, Patrick." From that moment, we spent the rest of the cruise together, cherishing every second we had. Even during the brief times we were apart, I found myself missing her. My body ached for her. But more than that, I wanted her to know me completely, and I wanted to know everything about her. There was no doubt in my mind that when we finally made love, it would be worth the wait. In her presence, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Simply talking to her brought out the best in me, something I hadn't experienced in years. Heather Hardy and Tara eventually came to Florida. When Heather arrived for the interview, she was surprised to discover that I would be the one responsible for hiring her. As soon as she walked into the room, I couldn't contain myself. "I've missed you. What took you so long?" I said, grinning. "I've missed you too, Patrick, more than you could imagine," she replied, flashing the smile that had captivated me from the start. We started dating, and 3 months later, I proposed. I loved her deeply, and her daughter Tara brought even more joy into my life. She was a miniature version of her mother, with green eyes and Heather's raven black hair. Within weeks, Tara began calling me Dada. I finally had the family I had always dreamed of. One night, after an incredible lovemaking session, we lay snuggled together, catching our breath, when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Natalie's name. "Patrick, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need your advice." Her voice trembled. "What's the matter? Loverboy not home tonight?" I asked, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, Patrick, I made such a huge mistake when I cheated on you. I'm so sorry," she cried. "He's drained my bank account and is never around. He convinced me to take out a second mortgage on the house for some investment, and now the money's gone. I'm afraid I'm going to lose the house. And lately, he's been getting abusive. I'm scared he's going to hurt me. What am I supposed to do? You were always so good at handling problems." Her voice cracked as she broke into sobs. Her tears, which would have once torn at my heart, left me completely unmoved. "I can't believe you're calling me for advice," I said, my voice cold and emotionless. "You threw away our marriage for that unemployed piece of trash and shattered my heart in the process. Did you really think that boy could replace me? That he'd stick with you through better or worse? I can't help you, Natalie. You made your bed, and now you'll have to lie in it. You were right about one thing, though. He's everything I'm not. Goodbye." Without waiting for a response, I hung up and turned back to Heather Hardy. She smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding, and we held each other close. The phone call was never mentioned again. It didn't matter. Heather was mine, and I was hers. That was all that mattered. That night, we slept soundly in each other's arms, leaving the ghosts of the past exactly where they belonged. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more of Love, Lust, Lies.